going to talk about leisure time. So I watched some of the other Quantified self-talks online. It sounds like tracking time is one of the big ones. So just out of curiosity, how many people have tracked their time before? And let's see how long we've done it for. How many people have done it for at least a week? Hands up. How about more than a month? More than a year? 2 years? 4 years? Okay, so a couple people 2 years. So I've tracked my time over the past 6 years, but about once a week for a quarter. So sample data over a longer period of time. And so what I wanted to present today was just sort of what I've been able to see over the past 6 years of my life. Started when I was about 20 years old, 26 now, and we'll look at some of the findings and how I did this. So basically it all started when I was in college. I think I was a junior, and one of my teachers, actually an art history teacher of all things, posed the question, why are we always tired on Mondays after we just had 2 days to rest? And I think we all know what it feels like to have a case of the Mondays. You know, we don't want to go into work and do things, but you just had 2 days to rest. Or I mean, this week we had 3 days to rest if you had Martin Luther King Day off, but we still feel tired. And why is that? We have leisure time. It's probably a decision we made that maybe we made poorly if we're not feeling rested after our rest time before we go back into our labor time. And so what I said is, okay, well, how can I be informed about this? How can I understand what's happening? And obviously data is the way to do that. And so back then, being non-technical at all, I was a business major, I decided to use handy dandy Excel. And this is a blurry screenshot. It looks like it's out of proportion. It's probably my fault. But what I basically did was tracked a bunch of things about what I was doing, and I started basically doing 15-minute increments. And the meat and potatoes of it is this section right here, where I tracked what was I doing, when did I start, and when did I finish. And so you can see that I started off my very first tracking system at a party until 2 in the morning, and then I proceeded to sleep for 7.5 hours, and then had some things in the morning, and going on. And so I did this, and then what I realized is I should create categories to sort of bucket things, because things are going to fall into main categories. And all the rest of it sort of is math off of there, some Excel stuff that I could probably clean up. What you have here is my categories, and then the one thing I wanted to highlight on here was at the bottom you can see all my many tabs of how many times I've done this. So what I said is, what categories do I want? And I sort of bucketed this into a few main ones. The first one is survival. This is eating, sleeping, hygiene stuff, going to the bathroom, showering, whatnot. And this is sort of stuff you have to do to be alive. We're humans, and unfortunately that's what we're stuck with for now until someone can find a solution to it. Labor is time you're getting paid for, or at the time when I was in school, that's sort of what labor was. It's what you do, and there's a lot of tracking you can do around that, but I wasn't so interested in that because I knew I had to do what I had to do, and I was more interested in my labor. So, or in my leisure, sorry. And so leisure I broke up into these categories: social, time with other people; spiritual, whether that's church, temple, meditating, running 1,000,000 miles, whatever it may be, it's your sort of spiritual high; and then mind stuff, expression, body stuff, exercise; and then that final one, distraction time, that time where you're sort of doing something that's maybe not productive but you enjoy, whether it's TVs, video games, movies, or Reddit, all of which you can spend, you know, hours and hours on. And my goal was to sort of figure out what was happening, so I had an informed basically set of data about my life and optimize it some, and I figured those top 2 were pretty fixed. I couldn't do too much about that. The middle, was that 5 there? Middle 5, I wanted more of in my life. I felt those things were important, I wanted to prioritize. And that bottom one, I realized like I enjoyed doing that, but I probably didn't want to spend as much time doing it. Now when we see the actual graph, you'll understand why I didn't want to spend as much time doing that. And then this one, I'm going to add in transport. I didn't realize this at the time because I lived on the college campus, and so my transport time between things was about 2 minutes, you know, here or there walking to class. When I got into the real world and had to drive to work, I realized about 40 minutes to an hour of my day was gone every day. And so that was a big realization halfway through this process. So after doing this for a week, you have a nice pie chart of how do I spend my time. And you know, a big chunk of it's survival. I hear that goes down over time. You need to sleep less and less sort of as you get older, or depending on your caffeine consumption. You know, labor, that's sort of school at the time, then, you know, social, different things. I was actually a cross-country runner in college. I only ran about 10 to 15 miles a day, so nothing in comparison. But I did get a solid chunk of running in there every day, so happy to have some exercise. And what I did is extended this out now that I've done this for about 6 years, and you can see some trends. You know, one of the big ones you'll notice is the amount of time my labor has sort of been in my life has gone up dramatically. I wasn't the best student in school. I kind of went to the minimum amount of classes. I was more interested in sports and drinking. And as I spent more time working, I realized you can drink while you work, and so that problem has solved itself. And you know, now I work in Silicon Valley where, you know, 60-hour weeks are sort of the norm, if not more, and so that's gone up. Sort of survival stuff is about even, and then I've had obviously less time for leisure type stuff. So that right there is when I graduated. You can see there was some chunk in there where I obviously got a lot of sleep because the blue line went up for a little bit, but it was right about after that point that I had to start working a lot more because that's the nature of the real world. And so this is my leisure time, or no, this is everything. So with all the categories that I mentioned before, now taking out survival and labor, this is sort of my leisure time. And you can see the distract one that I talked about in pink is the one that I wanted to do less time. About 35% of my time was spent watching movies and playing video games in college. I watched a lot of movies and played a lot of video games. And I realized that like I love doing those things, but I should probably do less of them because I'll still enjoy it if I watch like one movie a day instead of two, or maybe one a week. And so that's something I wanted to change. And you can see there at the top, the light green one, after I graduated school, I obviously had to have more time in transport, getting around between places. And then, social at the bottom, I'm actually really happy that that one's increased. I love spending quality time with people I care about, whether it's friends or family. And so this is sort of how things have evolved over time. So some of my learnings from this process. First of all, commuting takes a lot of time. It just really can eat up like 10 hours of your week depending on where you live and work. And so I tried to optimize that by listening to books on tape while driving. I now bike, so to be safe, I sort of don't do that, but it's exercise and transportation at the same time, so a little bit of win-win. Another thing I learned is that for everyone, something is the first thing to go. And for me, it's social time. That's sort of, I'm a little bit of an introvert, so I like to go home and watch a movie or sort of be in a dark room with a blanket over my head or whatever it may be. For you, it might be something different, but when your schedule gets busy, something is going to pay the price. It might be exercise, it might be social time, it might be something. And so it's important to know what that is, so when you have stresses coming in, you can say like, oh, I need to make sure I have this much time for that thing, because that's the one that goes. And then the final thing, for college athletes, or really for anyone, it's really easy to get out of the habit of exercising. I was running a lot. I never thought I would stop exercising, and I use Runkeeper to track like my exercise, and I'm like, whoa, it's been a month since I've gone for a run. How did that happen? And so that's one thing that really sneaks up on you if you don't find people to exercise with. Is that my time?
That is your time. If you want to take...
Yeah, I got one last slide. So methodology learnings, I can say that word, is that it's hard to find good weeks to do if you're doing this sort of sample data once a quarter thing that I did, because like there might be a weekend you have a vacation planned or something, or a busy week at work, and so maybe a more consistent method may make it a little bit easier to get accurate data. And then categorizing things can get tough if you multitask, like eating and watching TV. And then finally, the data I need is really simple. It's basically what was I doing and when did I finish it? And then you got to categorize it at some point. So I think it could be much easier to do that. I'm actually interested in talking to you guys because it sounds like you're doing some cool stuff with time. So I threw my template up online. If you want to see the template for the Excel thing I did, it's up here. You can take a look at it. Feel free to use it or leave comments. And that's my thing. Questions?
What did you do when you were doing two things, like exercising with a friend? I guess that's majority exercise.
Yeah, so I forget, I did different things at different times. I think at first I tried to ignore that that was the thing that happened. I was like, no, I didn't design this into my system, so that can't be happening. And then I eventually realized, like, okay, I am doing two things at once. I might have split task things. I realized this in college, like at one point, that I would go to lunch by myself some days and eat in like 15 minutes. And other days I'd go with like a group of friends and we'd be in the cafeteria for 2 hours. And I was like, well, it clearly didn't take me 2 hours to eat. I know I can do it in 15 minutes. So I'm going to call that an hour 45 of social and 15 of eating. And I think I started splitting things off like that. And like if I ate and watched TV, I'd split the time. I don't know that's the best way to do it, but it kept the hours in the week to the right amount. So.
Do you just find yourself topping it up at the end of the day, or do you kind of have it open in a tab and do it through the day? Or
yeah, so I would just, I have my laptop everywhere with me most of the time, so I keep Excel open and do it. And once in a while, if you're out and about, when you come back home, sort of go through and be like, oh, when did I do this and that? And so yeah, usually like 4 or 5 times a day, I'd be updating what I did. Since I wasn't concerned with what I was doing specifically with leisure, work is real nice because like you leave for work at whatever time in the morning and you get home and I should be like, that's labor time, like don't care about it. Sort of those hours in the evening that were most in the weekends. I think you had your hand up first. Either one of you. Yeah.
So over time,
yeah, go for it.
So over time, I'm curious about the active tracking. How did that actually influence your behavior?
Yes, that's really interesting. I would always think about it like, oh, I'm tracking myself this week. I better read some. Like, and I tried to be like, I tried to be an honest scientist and like pick weeks that I knew were going to be like a typical week for that season of my life. Like, I wouldn't pick the week where I went to Tahoe for 4 days and be like, oh, that was an average week. I snowboard for 8 hours a day. Like, try to pick a week that's somewhat normal and try not to do anything that's like too different from my normal week. Like if I caught myself being like, oh, I'm gonna go sit down and read for 4 hours, but at that time in my life, I was reading for half an hour a day, I'd be like, okay, this was dishonest, like let's try to get back to your normal schedule. So that's the complication of it, is how do you be honest, and maybe having a more passive system makes it easier. But the more you do it, and like after a whole week, you kind of stop faking it. So you end up being a little bit more honest with yourself just because of effort. Yeah?
How much time do you actually spend just administering your log of yourself?
I actually log how much time I spend logging too. Once in a while, I call it this thing, like in the spreadsheet.
There's a feedback loop there.
Yeah, it's about half an hour to like set up and set like my goals. I do predictions for what I want and sort of set goals for how I want to spend my time at the beginning of the thing. And then during the week, it's minimal. It's usually like 5 minutes at a time logging the day. I'll do it a few times a day, and at the end, I'll do some calculations on it. So over the week, it's pretty consistently like 2 to 3 hours of time in the week is spent tracking during the tracking week. So might be something I should account for, but at least it's consistent in each of the iterations I've done with 12 or 14 of them now.
I guess then, if you wanted to deploy this, like, if other people were to do this, like, how would people eventually do it where you didn't have to log yourself?
I think that's a great question. I think that's something that would be awesome to solve, and I think there's some apps figuring out how to do that. And yeah, I'm really interested in hearing what ideas other people have, because doing Excel once a quarter is probably not something I want to do my whole life, but I'd love to have this data going forever. So passive stuff would be awesome. Yeah.
Do you think that it would be meaningful to track when you're being social how many people you're with? Like 1 seems very different from 2. How different is 2 from 5? And would that have added much meaning if you were tracking that as well?
Absolutely. That's super interesting, a way to drill down into it, because it's very different being at a party at 2 in the morning than like spending an hour with my wife or something. And so that would be a layer of depth I'd want to go into. The one thing I like about how I logged it is I try to leave like 2 or 3 words about what I was doing, then categorize it. So if I ever have to update categories, I can kind of like infer what that was and recategorize. And I did this once. I added 2 of the categories and sort of split some things up. And so that's the one thing I liked about like, adding 3 words about what I was doing. Sometimes you look back and you're like, what did like jumping hoop rock mean? Like, that's nonsense. All right, thank you guys.
Awesome.